I've been an educator for 31.3 years, and in that time, I've seen a lot of bad eggs. I say eggs because at the elementary level, we are not dealing with fully developed individuals. I see a bad egg when I look at your niece. She is a twiddler, a dreamer, a silly heart. She is a jabberbox. And frankly, I don't think she takes a thing in her life or her career as a student seriously.
She's only 6.
That is not a valid excuse.
So that was one of John Candy's greatest hits, Uncle Buck. And say what you want about that vice principal, but she was speaking how she felt and conveying what she expected of her students. I mean, what more can you ask for? At least she, didn't lie or try to manipulate. So with that being said, I want to talk about a new aged technique that's been used for the past 2 decades or so in schools. It's called the Reid Technique, and it was originally developed by the FBI, or for the FBI, I should say, and slowly more departments, regular law enforcement, all that, they started to adapt it, because when you have a lack of evidence and you need a breakthrough, this technique produces results in that situation. I asked AI for the key distinctions between investigations and interrogations, and this is what it came up with. Investigations can be friendly. Interrogations are usually intense and direct, intent to pressure or persuade. Legal rights during an interrogation, especially in legal contexts. So they're saying with a law enforcement officer, you have rights. The emotional tones. Investigations may be calm. Interrogations can be wild with emotions and have tactics designed to break somebody down. An investigation might end with no action if there's not enough evidence. An interrogation often aims to close the case with a confession or key information. Investigations can be conducted without the subject's knowledge. Interrogations are, by definition, known to the subject, who is actively participating or refusing to participate. So those are some good key distinctions I want you to think about as we go through the rest of this. What is the Reid Technique? Who developed it? And how did it get in schools? The picture of a man and a woman there, that gentleman is Johnny Reid. And yes, his wife is hooked up to a lie detector. He's kind of known as the founder and father of the lie detector. And he also happened to write the Reid Technique. And the FBI was the first known usage of it in, I believe, the mid-60s. And it was widely accepted and used as years progressed because it does have good results of getting confessions. But the quality of confession has always came into question. But when you're dealing with some of the world's worst criminals and society's least desirables, those are liberties you might have to take. Fast forward some time and you have this gentleman here, Joseph P. Buckley. He's the one who thought it would be a great idea to implement this in the educational system. There have been multiple studies saying that youth have a higher rate of confessions when using deceptive techniques like this, yet they claim that the method they developed for educators is less harsh than the one for adults. Well, let's dive into that theory. The Reid Technique is made up of these two elements: the behavior analysis interview the nine steps of Reid. In the behavior analysis interview, you are first going to listen to the person's truthful events. This is how you kind of started off. Let me describe how we do investigations here. I'm going to be asking you a series of questions. I know the answer to a lot of these questions already. I just want to see if you're going to answer them truthfully. And then you give your pure version of events. And whenever you stop that, you stop telling your story, they're going to ask you to go on, continue, which will make you uncomfortable if you told them everything like they asked you to, and they monitor how they made you feel uncomfortable. And then they start asking you to expand. They ask you about how your emotions are felt, and this is all to judge how you feel under discomfort. And then this is what I wanted to add to this. So they go from just a regular interview that they're analyzing to the behavior provoking questions. Like, what do you think should happen to the person? Or how do you think the person who did this should be punished? What do you think, even though you didn't do it? Do you think the person who did this deserves a second chance? How will the results of this investigation impact you? I'm not saying you did this, but that's where the evidence is pointing. And that's all just to monitor. It's just to monitor how the person reacts under that stress that they're unduly getting put through. And that flows into the 9 steps of Reid. But before I get to that, I want to show you their verbal and nonverbal traits that either prove you're truthful or prove you're deceptive. All right, here we go. So these are the verbal and nonverbal traits that a truthful and deceptive individual supposedly give off. Like the biggest ones that I'm going to point out here on the truthful side: leans forward, direct and spontaneous, open, smooth posture changes, reasonable answers. The reason why I highlight those is because that's the demeanor of the investigator. They're taught that this is how truthful people have to act. So this is how you posture yourself and hold yourself together while conducting the investigation. Now, a deceptive individual, the one that makes me the most upset on here is down here. It says refers to God or religion. I don't know what they're getting at there, but because you believe in God, I guess you lie. That's got something to say. So yeah, I got another slide for the nonverbal questions. Let me put that one up. So it's all just pretty much the same thing. Now, eye contact, avoids eye contact during key questions. Now, I could see how there could be truth to that, but I'm hard of hearing in one ear, so I turn my good ear towards people. Does that mean I'm deceptive? I don't know. Overly polite? Like, how is that deceptive? Unconcerned? What if you're unconcerned because you know you're not guilty? complaining. If you're being detained against your will, why wouldn't you be complaining? Especially if you're a kid and you don't know that you can't leave. It's just wild. It's wild that this pseudoscience is being used to judge children. All right. Now it starts to get worse here with the 9 steps of Reid. Once the educator believes they have gathered enough of your verbal and nonverbal traits, they will leave the room and re-enter the room as an interrogator this time. And they'll be holding a folder or a piece of paper in their hand, and they'll say, I have the results of our investigation. Jim, there's a lot more you need to tell me to clear this up. They'll sit down, discard the file, assume that forward-leaning posture that I described to you before, and then they lead into theme development. So they create this like common phrase. They say it. Here it says develop a theme that minimizes the moral seriousness of that offense. So that'd be like saying, "Oh, you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time." At that point, they'll keep saying the theme until they get a denial. As soon as they hear, "Can I say something?" or words of that sort, they immediately cut off the suspect's train of thought and interject command phrases and gestures. Like, don't start in on that. Don't start in on that. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to help you. Come on, I need the truth. They say that truthful suspects don't talk and they don't go past step 3. So if, like, you're respecting authority, that means you're guilty or at least being deceptive. For number 4, we have overcoming objections. So an objection is usually a statement that starts like "that's ridiculous" and follows by a statement that infers the suspect's innocence. Like, there's no way I stole the $50 because I have $100 in my wallet already. And then the investigator would say, you know, I hope that's true. I hope that's true and you didn't walk in with $50 and took somebody else's $50. And, you know, I hope not. Or, I would never steal, my dad didn't raise a thief. The investigator would say, gee, I sure hope that's true because I wouldn't want to have to call your father and, you know, let him know that you disappointed him. You know, we should just get ahead of it now. So, after that, you have step 5, procurement and retention of the suspect's attention. You're trying to keep them engaged if they get defensive or start to withdraw. You jump back to your theme and you intensify it. And like I said, they'll flop the words around and all of that. Repeat the person's name over and over again. Use gestures of sincerity to establish understanding. You don't want to seem like you're upset. You want them to think that you understand because it can happen to anyone. This is the one that makes me upset the most. Handling passive mood. The person may become less tense, defeated. They may even cry. What the investigator is supposed to do is intensify that theme. Essentially make them cry. Remain close. And then jump to number 7, the presenting alternative questions. So, you are going to offer a good and bad reason, and each are incriminating. And the interviewer is going to end with it inferring the good. I know that you're sorry for what you did, Jim, because you're a good person. And I know that you want to make things right. because if you don't make things right, this issue is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until you're just going to explode. You don't want to explode, do you, Jim? That's the gist of it. So next is having the suspect orally relate to details of the crime. You give open-ended questioning to obtain details of the offense. Essentially, they're saying it's facts only the guilty could know. But if you watched Making a Murderer and saw the Reid technique get used on Brandon Dassey, who was of diminished cognitive ability and a child, he was giving facts that nobody knew. He was making them up just so he could get out of that room, because that's what they tell you. This is all over as soon as you tell the truth. They repeat that theme as well. As soon as they have a head nod or any kind of affirmation, they will try to convert the oral confession to a written statement. And they will make sure to establish the voluntariness of that statement in the written. So that way it can't be, or most likely will not be, admissible in court, probably for a long time. So those are the 9 steps, to my understanding. So I decided to make all of those steps flow together better for this video. I would attempt to draft my own Reid technique. This will start when the 9 steps of the technique start. Eric, as you know, I spoke with James already, and after speaking to everyone in line, you're the only suspect we've yet to rule out. So we're gonna sit down and figure it out. And Eric, from what I know about you, you're always behaving yourself when you're alone. That means you're a good person that knows right from wrong, and you usually do right? But sometimes it's hard when friends pressure you or dare you. I think it was a dare from James, and you didn't want to be called chicken again, did you? If James didn't dare you, you wouldn't have done the dare, would you? Now I know you wouldn't have, because I know the real Eric, and he's a good guy, and he wouldn't steal alone. That was a goofy mistake. Eric says, I don't know where it is, so it's impossible for me to be guilty. Well, gee, Eric. I sure hope you don't, Eric. And the results tell me it's possible. And I bet you know the possibilities. But it was a mistake. A goofy one at that. And you can still get ahead of this. Eric, those tears don't lie. And I know it feels good to let that out. Hands Eric a tissue. Your emotions are telling me you're sorry. And you're disappointed with your judgment. You succumbed to the pressure, and you made a goofy mistake. You're still a good person that will do the right thing, right, Eric? I know you will. The Eric I know would. You know I'm right, Eric. And if we don't put this behind us, this issue will just grow and grow and grow until it's out of control. But that's not Eric. Eric, your silence is starting to say more than your words. I need you to clarify this now, or I don't know how I'm going to be able to help you. It was the first mistake, right, Eric? Eric nods his head. I'm glad to see the Eric I remember again. Let's get this on paper and get this behind us. Anybody from Johnny Reid and Associates or anybody trained in this technique will tell you that my version was probably incorrect and absurd. And I'll agree with you, it's absurd. But this is absurd. This is absurd. 41 pages of mental manipulation and pseudoscience based on the findings of a guy that made it all up. You see the gentleman in the podium up in the top corner? That gentleman's name is Daryl Parker. And on December of 55, when he was 24, he came home to find his wife beaten, raped, and strangled. And good old Detective Johnny Reid jumped on the case to use his newly found pseudoscience and coerced a confession out of this guy. 1991, he was exonerated. 45 years later. Above me, we all know that's Brandon Dassey. They used the Reid technique on him. He gave his false confession. It was tossed out by the Supreme Court, yet he's still in. And then, to my side here is from the 2012 Netflix show When They See Us, which was based on the Central Park Five. They all were convicted after giving coerced confessions. When is this going to stop? I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Now, criminal cases that are high profile, now that develops a false confession. That's grotesque. That's a travesty, and it grosses me out because somebody knew their Miranda rights. And that's the same exact reason I'm twice as outraged they're doing it to children in schools, because they're not reading them Miranda rights. The school liaison officer leads the kid to the office and then goes, speaks to the vice principal and tells him what to say. Whispers the interrogation technique in his ear, just so he doesn't have to read him his rights. I'm sorry, what are we sending kids to school for? An education. What's the one thing that they'll most likely have from birth to death? Their rights? And you're not going to educate them on that? We're not going to Y'all got it. You know what? I'm going to just leave you with some more Uncle Buck.
But I know a good kid when I see one. Because they're all good kids. Until dried out, brain-dead skags like you drag them down and convince them they're no good. You so much as scowl at my niece or any other kid in this school and I hear about it, and I'm coming looking for you. Take this quarter. Go downtown and have a rat gnaw that thing off your face.